NBS happening now.
Very good afternoon to you, and thank you for watching NBS Television. My name is Ben Mwine. As we prepare for the budget reading for the financial year 2024-2025, which is expected to be delivered by the Minister of Finance tomorrow afternoon. And in this year's budget, the government has set out a very ambitious plan to grow our economy tenfold, from $50 billion as it is at the moment to more than $500 billion within the next 15 years. Is this something that is a pipe dream? Is it achievable or not? The Permanent Secretary and Secretary of the Treasury, Ramadan Gobi, while launching the budget month earlier on, said that the government is going to achieve this through a number of things, including agro-industrialization, tourism, mineral and oil exploration, as well as science and innovation. Joining me to have a discussion about how feasible this is and how we can be able to attain this tenfold increase in our economy, if it is possible, is Nelson Tugume, who is a Group CEO at Inspire Africa Group. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. Tugume. Welcome to NBS. Good to see you.
Thank you, Ben Mwine, and good to see you too after a while, and good afternoon to you all viewers.
So you've been very busy trying to be a big part of this tenfold growth of the economy. It sounds almost impossible to achieve from what you've been seeing. Starting from there, is it just English? Can we actually be able to attain this kind of tenfold growth in our economy based on where we are as a country at the moment?
I think anyone in my generation, to me, tenfold is not even ambitious enough. We should actually have said 30-fold.
30-fold?
Yes. This country has all what it takes, Ben, to even go 30-fold. But anyway, let's go with the tenfold and start from there.
It's baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps.
Yeah.
Talk about the industrialization that you've talked about. You know, Ben, the economy is in three facets all over the world, not us as Uganda, but three facets. You know, talk about agriculture, industrialization, that's manufacturing and processing, and then service and industry, services. So we've been a lot leaping because of agriculture. I think at one point, the PSST mentioned that agriculture cannot take us to the next level, can never develop any country.
In its current form.
In its current form.
Right.
So now that we bring in industrialization and manufacturing, that's the next step, which can get us to tenfold. And I believe that can happen. If you look at the different value chain products that you have as a country, starting with coffee, where I'm really highly involved. Right now, we're approaching to $1 billion. I mean, we're about 800 to 900. That's where we are oscillating. If we just add value, I mean, the math is clear. If you just add value to that 900, just by half, because what we've been doing is a lot to do with processed coffee. Unprocessed coffee.
Just selling the beans.
Exactly. Right. If we just do only a half as a country, we'll quickly go to $5 billion. And that's what we recently launched, that can we get $5 billion in the next 5 years? And that's the tenfold that we are talking about. Is that too much? I don't think so. When we say about value addition, by the way, it's not science. It's not like rocket science. It's not so much. It's not an experiment of science. It is just a transfer of knowledge, of industrialization. Ben, these things have been done. Some people who think we have good ideas, we are innovative, I don't think so. We just need transfer knowledge and probably innovate a little bit of marketing and branding, be able to put global products out there on the shelf, be able to actually even be a little bit scientific, maybe roasting on a higher altitude. What does it mean? Because, you know, when you go to India, when you go to the US, you're at about maybe 800 meters above sea level.
Right.
So if I roast at 1,600 meters above sea level, what are those attributes that I bring in the market so that my product is really appreciated globally?
Does that actually make a difference for the coffee, the altitude at which it is?
Absolutely. If there is a difference when you're growing it, why not even when you're roasting it?
Right.
It's about branding and marketing. Ben, you know about these things.
What is it about? And let's start by talking about coffee. For the very longest time, coffee was our biggest forex earner. It still is up there. amongst the top maybe 3 or 4 forex
Gold,
earners for
gold
Uganda.
has...
So you have gold, you have tourism, you have
Yeah.
coffee, which for the majority of people has the biggest benefit from the farmers that are growing it. For a very long time, Uganda was right up there in terms of both the quality of coffee that we had and the amount of coffee we were able to export. We've now been overtaken by countries like Vietnam, who are dwarfing us. Shouldn't that be a place that we maybe start off before we even think about value addition, the fact that we don't seem to have grown that much in terms of just the amount of coffee that we are exporting as a country?
Ben, you and I know you've grown up in the school system here, that at least I'm sure about that. You first understand or study in classes, maybe primary 3, that coffee is a cash crop. Already, someone who doesn't want you to go into the value addition space start killing you at primary 3. I think we should scrap that crap in our curriculum.
I like that pun.
Yeah, you know.
Scrap that crap.
Yeah, Ben, that's the truth.
Right.
Because when I travel around the world, people never know coffee as a cash crop. They know coffee as a beverage. And what have they been able to do? They have innovated around that. And that's where the money is. That's why you hear that the global consumption of coffee or the global trade is $460 billion. Africa, which is the biggest producer, gets only 2.6. Why? Because at primary 3, your mind, your head is killed. So what do? Let's innovate around production. You know, you will see all our scientists in Uganda, professors, name them. What have we innovated? For the 100 years, we've innovated around seedlings. KR1, I mean, those of you know about coffee, KR1 now to KR11. Have we innovated about the best drink in the cup? It's about disease resistant. It's about drought resistant. I'm not saying we shouldn't do those things. But if we have done them for the last 100 years, have we increased on our value? So now value addition immediately comes in to make sure as a country you keep the value in the country. You need to realize that, Ben, no one will come to tell you that you need to add value to your coffee. Because in any case, people must actually continue encouraging you, Ben, to continue selling your raw material because they need to make money out of you. Right. This is a capitalistic world. Who wants to know to make money out of you, Ben? That's what you need to know. It's the same basket, the same economy, so whoever gets smarter gets the money. Yeah. And that's what has been happening for a long time.
Because the truth of the matter is that at the moment, it's always very disgusting for me personally whenever I go to a high-end hotel and being served Nescafe. And I know you and I have spoken about this several times before. There already seems to be a problem in the fact that while we are exporting raw beans or just dry beans, they are then being brought back to us, not even the best of our quality. They're giving us substandard things that are packaged as instant coffee and then sold to us at maybe 20 times the price. What do we do about changing the mindset of people to be able to understand that? Because there has been a lot of backlash whenever there's been a suggestion that we need to teach. Again, a discussion we've had when we talk about teaching people how to drink coffee, people say, these ones are just trying to steal money. Right?
I know. Ben, the war we are in, one is the war of the mind. There's nowhere Africa can go without first renewing our mind. Even the Bible says, renew your mind. The moment we don't have a better mind to know how to do things and change things, then it's going to be tough for us to do value addition because in the first place, we don't even manufacture this machinery. We don't manufacture this equipment. So even our mind for industrialization as a country is still so far, Ben. I've been to countries in Japan, in China, in Russia, in all these countries that have been able to industrialize, and where they have gone, the mindset that we need to bring on board on Ben friends is very, very, very key. So let's start with number one, Ben. Value addition, industrialization can only move so fast, and also answering your question of tenfold, when our minds are right. Ben, no one is going to come tell us in the world to know how to do things. No one is going to come to tell us to be smart. I know we have smart people here in Uganda, but I think we got to be much smarter because the world has gone so far, Ben. Let me give you an example when I talk about industrialization. Recently, you saw that we're going to be doing some cold brew. I mean, some coffee just to take from your fridge. I mean, we're going to do iced coffees, we're going to do the cappuccinos which are cold. So what that means is that we do not have a machine in Uganda that does those tins you see. So we go to make an order.
We don't have a machine in Uganda
that
that
makes
is
just
able to make
the tins.
Right.
Or the packaging that tin
for,
you see.
Right.
So those cans, I went to the factory and I was honored enough to visit around the factory. They don't allow anyone because they have patents of different different brands. But I was able to visit that machine, and this is what I realized. I made an order of about $255,000. That's close to a billion shillings.
More than a billion.
More than a billion shillings. So this is what happened, Ben. One, my order was put after 65 days. What that means is that for the next 65 days, the line was full. I ordered for 2.5 million cans. Would you tell me how much it would take them to produce that? Do you have an idea? How much?
2.5 million cans.
Okay, yeah. How much time do you think they would need?
Maybe a couple of months.
Couple of months.
Right.
Ben, this only took 2 hours and 15 minutes.
2 hours and 15 minutes.
So it means to produce the 2.5 million cans.
2.5 million cans in 2 hours.
2 and 15 minutes.
Wow.
So it means that for every 2 hours and 15 minutes, this guy is making over a billion shillings.
Yeah.
But do you see the precision of technology which some of these countries have moved? So is it the time for us to lament and say many things, or it's about to say, oh my God, the world has left us and we got to do something? So when I say transfer of technology, is that we do not need to innovate so much. We just need to know who to work with affordable technologies, and then bring everything here.
Because just to put it into context again, even as we prepare for this budget reading tomorrow, the discussion again about it being a tenfold increase in our economy in the next 15 years. If we're going to do that, the sectors that we're talking about, the one that you are an expert in is coffee. Uganda, at the moment, among the top 10 countries in the world in terms of coffee exports.
Yeah, we're number one, actually, coffee exporter in Africa.
For Africa, yes. But globally, about
10,
number 8 or thereabouts. You have people like Brazil and Vietnam who are in that mix. But also, in terms of the global coffee industry, there's about maybe 2.1 billion coffee cups that are consumed.
We're consuming about 3 billion cups a day.
Almost now up to 3 billion cups a day.
3 billion cups a day.
And the idea, again, the point I'm trying to bring out here for you is the fact that if we are in the top 10 coffee producing countries in the world that consumes at least 3 billion cups of coffee every day, at bare minimum, we should be aiming to get maybe, even if it's 5%
of the 3 billion.
Of those coffee cups. If we do that, we manage to achieve, like you said, the 30-fold increase in our coffee revenues just from...
I think if you go that route, even you go 50-fold. Right. If you go that route. We're not saying even with that ambitious to go that route. That route has already been taken on by some people like Starbucks, and you know what, there is more expense to go even that route. But can we be on Amazon?
Right.
Can we find Ugandan coffee on Amazon? We do capsules right now, as you've seen, and sachets. And we're going to instant coffee, by the way. Right. We're going to be the first plant in Uganda to produce instant coffee, but also to excite the country. We're going to be the first country in Africa to produce freeze-dry coffee. And this is coming soon.
Please explain that to a layman. All I know is I go and order for a cup of coffee, it's given to me. So when you say things like freeze-dry, I'm thinking,
freeze-dry,
what is that?
Freeze-dry is one of the highest, latest technology in extraction of coffee, producing coffee, the instant coffee you take,
Right.
producing instant coffee at -50. And therefore you extract the beans, which are already ground, to make sure you get without losing any nutrients. So when you're taking our instant coffee, it will be gold or premium.
Yeah.
You will not have lost any nutrient. And we want to do it that you're taking the real coffee. So I know you're a coffee addict.
Yes, I am.
So when you see our instant coffee,
a proud.
when you see our
I think
instant
I've done.
coffee,
I'm on my fourth or fifth cup so far today.
exactly. So when you see our instant coffee, don't think it's this shit coffee. No, we want to be number one of those people who are innovating real instant coffee, but coffee that is real.
Yeah.
Because we're coming from a producing country,
Yeah.
it should be able to produce.
So you mentioned a very interesting word. One of the key things that PSST we talked about was the whole idea of innovation, and this seems to be an extremely important aspect of what we must do if we're going to be able to, get to this promised land. What are some of the innovations that you think we can employ, some of the ones that you are employing, apart from freeze drying, for example, that would allow us to be able to ensure that not only are we able to do this sustainably, but actually also scale it up to the point where we become competitive on the global scene?
There's something I've realized, Ben, and we look like we continue downplaying some of these issues. The issue of investment. We must innovate around investment. Investment is very key. Show me where you put your money, I'll show you what is there. We must innovate as a country, as a people, as entrepreneurs, as a society, as a country, to know how we innovate to get some of these innovative ideas to come to light. Let me give you an example, Ben. And to me, one of the and one of the things that I like doing, and to be blunt, even on a national television, is to advocate for a private sector-led economy. Right now, the budget that we're going to read, if you analyze it very well, maybe you get an economist. I'm not an economist, but if you read or get an economist very well, they'll tell you our budget is public sector-led.
Correct.
In other words, you have the public sector expenditure at about 75%, or even
development, it's quite high.
Exactly.
Right. 34 billion, I think. Right.
So while the private sector is down. So countries that have made it, you find the private sector budget is up here, and then the public sector is down. So what is public sector? You only spend on salaries, on just those kind of small things. So you put a lot of money in the private sector. I remember recently I saw some people trying to misunderstand the president supporting the value addition efforts by calling us thieves. Those who are calling us thieves, may God forgive them. Governments must put money in the private sector. Right. You like it, you don't like it. If you want to see your economy in tenfold, governments have done it. We are not the first one. I'll give you examples.
Isn't there a point, though, Mr. Tugume, to the fact that maybe the people who say these things have been beaten before and therefore coming from that place? Because one of the challenges we have in Africa is that many times you will find that resources do get misused. And the president himself has been talking about this quite a bit. He's been on a warpath against corruption. So wouldn't it be fair to say that there is justified skepticism sometimes, that if you're asking the government to put money in the private sector, that there will be concerns about how that money is going to be utilized, and therefore people are a bit concerned that that money might not do what it is supposed to do to help the private sector actually lead the economy?
Let's analyze that very well.
Right.
By the way, where has money been lost? Most of the money and corrupt scandals that have been lost in the hands mainly of public procurement and all that. Ben, when you're a private sector and you're given money, unless you're stupid and a fool, can you steal your own money? You understand what I mean? The best is, and unless you're a fool, you understand what I mean? Governments like China, what they have done is that they have put money in the private sector and put rules. And they say, Ben, we're giving you $10 million to go and build a road in Uganda. You don't do it, you don't come with that output. Actually, China is more tough. You don't only go to jail, but you know what happens.
Right.
Obasanjo, in the 90s, went to the United States and went his usual delegation, Minister of Finance and, the public officials. They get there and Bill Clinton had come with the likes of Google and those guys, the X-Space. And Obasanjo looked at this and said, wait a minute, am I in the right space? Obasanjo went back with one goal, to introduce and build entrepreneurs. Today you see Lagos and Nigeria, the Tony Lumelus, the Dangotes, they are not there by mistake. Ben, entrepreneurship, I always hear people, he's an upcoming entrepreneur. No, these are not things of artists of music. Entrepreneurs.
And the entrepreneur is from birth, right?
Yes.
You hustle from...
Exactly. There is no upcoming entrepreneur. That's crap. That's shit.
You either are or you're not.
I'm telling you, entrepreneurs, you got to have those deliberate efforts to make sure things happen. And therefore, governments today, with this budget that I'm seeing, I think it's about 52 trillion, getting 70 trillion.
72.
And by the way,
72 trillion.
Thanks to President Museveni. I think, Ben, I admire President Museveni. Do you know one reason why I admire President Museveni?
He's giving you a lot of money?
No. Yeah, maybe you could say that because, right. But let me tell you one thing. I've seen that Mzee in the hat, that old man in the hat, pushing money to the private sector where even no one believes. And what is he trying to get? Can we get some people who can get the results for this country? Not for himself. Right. So to me, I admire a man probably who has not done business, but is pushing in the area of the private sector and say, can we get something in coffee, in milk, in tin, in copper, trying to make sure real money goes in there.
Right.
So
I can tell you a very quick story in this regard, maybe to support your argument from my personal experience. A couple of months ago, we had the privilege of going to visit the Presidential Initiative on Banana. Reverend Dr. Muranga at her factory in Ishaka. Yeah. And to be very honest with you, I was absolutely, what's the English word, gobsmacked.
Overwhelmed
by the level at which they've been able to take what used to be a very basic, simple crop and turn it into something completely different. I mean, I know that there's a lot of work that they're still trying to do, but we were able to see how these guys are able to extract about 16 million shillings from an acre of matoke. The level of value addition to which they've been able to go in terms of creating products like mandazi and biscuits and the flour.
Matoke, yes.
I was impressed. I as a person, because we spent an entire day at the factory, and as a person who is normally very skeptical of the things that the government does, and the time that we spent with Dr. Muranga and her understanding of the system and her insistence for the independence that she was asking for, I could see where you're coming from, and because the honest truth is that at the time when they started this thing, no one believed. No one believed that anything like that could be possible, right?
What is happening in a country today is not the first time. It has happened everywhere in the world. Ben, let me tell you, you know Toyota. What do you think Toyota would be if there is no world of Toyota today? What do you think? But let me tell you the story of Toyota if you didn't know. The Prime Minister then of Japan went to the emperor. Toyota was in silk and other things. And the Prime Minister told the emperor and said, we are going to put money in this company because automobile is the next big thing.
As it has turned out to be.
I can tell you, everyone wanted to kill the Prime Minister. They said, how can you damn make that mistake? He told them, I'm putting my head. If this doesn't work, I'll come with my resignation.
Abdication, yes, because it's the emperor. So
the emperor got it and gave the prime minister a go ahead. They put in Toyota, they limped and limped and limped. To cut the story short, tell me. Let me give you other stories that
90% of the cars on
you know
our
the
roads are now
Carnegies,
Toyota.
the Banvelt,
Right.
the JP Morgans. Today, the American economy stands on those guys. But do you know who they are called? They are the monopolists. They are the most hated of their time. But they still live today because they set the economy of what you're seeing in the United States today. I can tell you, most 40% of the world economy is controlled by the American companies. 40%.
Right.
So that's why
most of whom are now actually controlling what we call intangible assets, because the economy of the present at the moment, one of the biggest companies in the world right now, Nvidia, whose market cap has shot to about $2.something trillion, wasn't anywhere in the picture a few years ago, and now all of a sudden you...
Yesterday I was meeting with a friend of mine who is actually Ugandan. He was one of the Walmart managers called Patrick Ogang. I just met him yesterday. He stays in the US. And he told me their turnover was about $120 million. One Walmart. They have over 8,000 stores. So this one private sector company. So what I'm trying to push, even for other Ugandans actually to come and we combine, rather than calling me a thief or whatever they want to call me, is to say, how do we even get more money from government to private sector?
Yeah.
I'm actually waiting for smart people like those. I think those who think I'm a thief, they would rather be smart enough to come and we combine efforts and even get more money to private sector in other many facets of the economy. Because if we don't do that, no one is waiting to build our economy. The time is now. The time is now for us to wake up.
Let's talk about that for a moment.
Yeah.
Because you say no one is going to do it for us. Because clearly it seems to benefit the bigger companies to see us giving them our raw materials in naked form, if you want to call it that, at the moment. A lot of our gold will be going out the way it is. A lot of our tea will be going out the way it is. Our coffee is going out the way it is. So clearly it benefits these big guys.
Yeah.
There have been suggestions that you have a global cartel that wants to try and make sure that things stay the way they are. How do we reverse that? Because clearly they're not going to let you just, come and take away their bread. They're making a lot of money off of us being able to give them our coffee in its unprocessed form, our tea in its unprocessed form, or a lot of our raw materials, our oil in its raw form. We've seen what happened in Nigeria with Dangote and his refinery and the challenges he had just to be able to try and get that off of the ground.
Of the ground. And now it can't work. Like I said, we are in a war of a big mindset change into our communities, into our country. To me, this is how I think it should be able to start. One, it should be able to start with, we can do it. And Ben, one of the things that has kept me going even amidst a lot of noise is that I never wanted to be one of those people to put a stumbling block on the next generation. When I fail, I can tell you, even your children's children may fail because of, I may not even know them, but because I've failed, they will say, but he failed. Because when you're in those corridors of trying to look for money, they have been giving me different examples of people who have failed. Ugandans, give me examples of people who have made it. Let's have some positive vibe. So that's why I'm just saying it's about the mind game. I don't know who taught us as Ugandans and as African people to always be thinking about people who have failed. We seem to glorify failure more than... I find You understand what I mean?
Yeah, there's a German word called it Schadenfreude, where you delight in other people's misery.
Yes.
Right.
So, is that something we can change? I think we can change it. So, give me more people who have succeeded. We have the Mruanas, the Mkwanos, but why are you always telling me people who have failed? Let's forget about that. Maybe we can do them as lessons, but those lessons, let them be 20%.
Yes, but Nelson, if you have the majority of people having failed, maybe it comes from that point where the rate of failure seems to be so much higher than the oddity of a Mukwano or a Mulwana who seems to have made it, but the majority of them seem to be falling by the wayside. Isn't there a big point in that as well? The fact that the majority of...
Big point. Why have we failed?
Right.
Can we know why we have failed? Because we keep persisting on failures. We're not even smart enough to go in the books and start reading and understanding. Ben, there is a system to make sure you keep failing. And until you realize that actually that system needs to be scrapped off. I've told you one simple thing. Ben, by showing and saying in primary 3 that coffee is a cash crop, that's where failures start from. That system is crafted enough and is ahead of us by over 200 years. So the time we know it and get it and stop being jealous, stop being and talking nonsense and get on the real ground and get things done, we are not going to get out of that system.
How do we change that through policy and regulation? Because if you're going to be able to do that, and one of the most touted examples that you hear about economic transformation will be Lee Kuan Yew and what he did in Singapore, and we see what the king did in Saudi Arabia. And for the majority of these guys who we can tout as good examples, and recently I had a chance to interview the team from the Kingdom of Norway, who are one of the few people that have turned oil into a proper blessing for its citizens. You get the sense that it had to come from high up above, where there was policy and regulation that was put in place to proactively empower and encourage this sort of growth. If we're going to have tenfold growth in our economy in the next 15 years to try and get to that $500 billion mark, what policies do you think are missing at the moment that we need to put in place? Where are we lacking? We keep hearing about how Uganda has very good policies that one never gets to implement. From your perspective, from the challenges you faced in what you're trying to do, what do you see as being the biggest hindrances?
I think, to me, and that's a very good one, Ben, when you put this whole thing like you've said, I think all of us as Ugandans, we are to blame. There is no higher, you call it higher what? Higher threshold. Right. But I'm trying to say, Ben, I do not know how many Ugandans tomorrow will be very keen and eager to listen to the budget speech. I'm not saying I'm not a fan of football and other things, but I do not know how many Ugandans
But there's no football until the weekend anyway, so. So,
how many of us Ugandans are being and very keen to listen to this budget, to know where it's going and start aligning themselves. And then when you start getting this information, then that's what, to me, patriotism is about. And maybe in the next budget you're saying, if there has been 20% that is going to private sector, can we now go on Twitter, all of us? I'm happy to mobilize people on Twitter to say, can you give more money to the private sector? The policies are there, Ben. They say we must go and be a private sector-led economy. We have the best policy. I will look for it or look for it. It's the best written policy. So can we put our efforts as Ugandans, tell the PSST, the Minister of Finance, the President, everyone, that Mr. President, we trust you and know you, and we know you are pro-private sector. Can we see monies going to the private sector? Right. Because, Ben, governments all over the world are not meant to do business. It's the private sector that can turn the economy into tenfold that you're talking about. It's a private sector that can save your money. It's a private sector that will be able to do all these things that you're talking about. So where is the jink? If I was the powers be today, I would turn things around. I would start seeing the budget coming from where 20% it is the private sector. Maybe every year go to 30, next year 40, the other year 50. By the time I see myself going to 30% of the money going to the private sector, the economy would have turned around.
As an entrepreneur, as an investor, there seem to be suggestions that the environment for business in Uganda and investors, for that matter, is not as conducive as some of our neighbors, for example. There seems to be suggestions that our neighbors down south in Rwanda and Kenya, for example, seem to be offering a better place and an environment for the private sector to be able to grow at the moment. From your personal experience, what is that looking like? Because
again, Ben, I keep saying, and I want you to take these things serious. Who put those ratings? Those ratings you follow by World Bank and IMF, who put them? Say that we are not the best or Rwanda is the best or whatever, who put them?
this is usually based on people who are doing business, giving the experience, saying that I set up a business in Rwanda, it was much easier, and I'm having a much easier time doing that than I did in Uganda, for example.
So that model, is it we Africans, we Ugandans who put those ratings and to know this one is rated like the other? I think these are some of the crap systems that we must first scrap off. But let me come back to your question. I think Uganda is a wonderful country in terms of investment return. Compare it with other countries when you're doing real estate here. Who will beat you? Leave alone real estate. Uganda, you're the food basket of the entire region. You can imagine, Ben, if we only, our neighbor just gave us an opportunity to give him maize, this country will never be the same. Do you know how much Kenya imports of maize and sugar from Brazil? And wheat and corn? You need to get the numbers. You'd be shocked. In trillions of money. So to me,
so why aren't we doing that?
One of the obstacles, like I said, we are still too much in the public sector thinking. Like I said, the policies are there, but unlocking and starting to realize that the backbone of the economy is the private sector is where the mindset, the jink, has not unlocked.
So I've got to ask, we live in a very capitalistic system globally. Where there's opportunity, people will follow that money. They will sniff it, they will smell it. If, as you're saying, the opportunity is that big, we should be trying to struggle to contain the number of investors who are trying to take advantage of this environment we have as a country. What is stopping us from people seeing the opportunity there is in Uganda as an investment destination? And I know that there is growth, we are seeing growth. But is it where it should be? If we are going to be honest with each other and have a good conversation about where we need to go vis-a-vis where we are at the moment, one would suggest that our growth could be, should be much better, much bigger. And you've had the president himself at various functions talk about how he is frustrated because he is being told by investors that they are being frustrated. What's the issue there?
And again, I'm just going to say the same thing. You must ask your public sector to reduce on its thinking or methodology or system that they must do business. They must allow the private sector to, for example, UIA was doing a very good job, the Uganda Investment Authority. I do not know how much as a country we've invested in that to make sure they continue taking care of the investors more than what they are doing today. I know PSFU is doing a great job. UMA is doing a great job. But how much of the decision are they making? So get like, you know, the Uganda Chamber of Commerce, UMA, PSFU, UIA, who are on the front line to make sure they behave. Let me use that word, like the private sector.
Right.
The moment my company, Inspire Africa Group, starts behaving like government, starts behaving like a public institution, that's the death of Inspire Africa Group. The animal and the animal and the big thing around governments is that they are not meant to do business because of their bureaucratic tendencies, but beyond their bureaucratic tendencies, they also have these huge systems they have to go through which cannot allow them to do business. And I believe one of the challenges that our country has got is that the government public officials trying to think they can do business. We need to let go, Ben.
Or trying to influence
Yes.
business.
We need to let innovation happen. You're asking me, what are the challenges? Ben, I go to UNBS to register a company. It takes me a day or two.
Right.
That's good. That's good. I go to get a license at KCCA. It takes me a day. That's wonderful. Maybe a bit of the justice system which needs to improve a bit, because what I've seen in other places, especially when it comes to commercial law, when I have a commercial issue, it should not go beyond 30 days without being resolved. I know that's a bit of, but those
we
are
have made progress in that regard, though. Our commercial court has improved drastically over the last 15 years.
Exactly.
So there's good progress in that.
So in other words,
area.
I'm saying those are simple internal challenges
Right.
to me that I think can change.
Let's-
I will, before you
Yeah.
go to that, I will tell you something. A mentor and good friend of mine told me, Nelson, he told me, what do you think is the problem of your coffee and Uganda as a country? And, you know, I started speaking a lot of English, which is not correct, branding and marketing. He asked me again, Nelson, what is the problem and challenge of your country and the coffee, why is not on the shelf? Then I'm bringing a lot of Zungu. Then he asked me, Nelson, you're a fool. Then he asked me again, what is the challenge of your coffee and the country not being on the shelf? Then I brought another reason. You see the farmers, he said, Nelson, you're a fool. And I didn't know you're a fool. He told me one thing, Nelson, get this from me today. Investment, investment, investment. In everything we do, Ben, if we don't invest money, forget.
Who doing the investing?
I'm saying whatever you're going to do.
Right.
If
So
you're
as a
going to-
country-
if you're going to do a studio like this,
Right.
you don't invest in it, just forget about the
And we do
returns.
invest in a lot in our studios, which is why they're best. The best. I
Thank you
think
so
on
much,
the
NBS,
continent.
by the way, for a wonderful job, and to my friend Kin for this wonderful job that I've seen here today. So, what do I mean? You want to get results, you must invest.
Right.
I can tell you, like in this coffee business that we're in, it's a business of men, not boys. I hear,
Because there's no cutting corners. The quality, there's nowhere to hide,
I
right?
just even laugh. You invest in 10 million in the coffee value chain and you think you've invested? Ben, forget, you don't invest 100 million, 120 million, you're not going to get the results that you're talking about.
Right,
You
so-
must invest.
See, that's a very good point for me to then ask you about where the money for the investment comes from.
Yep.
You've had the privilege of having access to resource in one way or another. There's a bunch of young people watching us this afternoon who are thinking, okay, I hear you. You sold the dream. It makes much sense. I want to be able to try and get into this, but they're telling you I have absolutely no access to finance.
Ben,
Where do I get the funding to even begin to start?
Ben, you know resource, and I know you did economics. Resource is never enough. Am I correct?
Right.
So as a country, what's your priority? If your priority is industrialization, then you put money there. You remember when the president said, I don't know if you are supported or not by the entire system. You know when he said he's going to put a lot of money into infrastructure, into roads. Ben, I don't know if you're born of my time, but maybe you're slightly younger than me.
I was born before you. I saw Idi Amin as a president. So.
But I remember from just Rwashamire to Ntungamo, it used to take us an hour, an hour and 30 minutes.
2 hours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ben, now it's just 10 to 15 minutes.
And for the benefit of our viewers, the distance from Rwashamire to Ntungamo is less than 20 kilometers.
Exactly.
Right.
So I've seen roads, I've been in northern Uganda, I've been in Karamoja. That decision taken by the president to put money into infrastructure, you've seen what it has created. So if now we're saying 10-fold economy, whatever route we are going to take, but Ben, also we don't have many options for your own information. Can I tell you why you don't have very many options? I'm saying industrialization, value addition. Why am I saying that? There is no, I do not know, maybe apart from Mauritius, I need to study, but there is no country, super country that we know today, starting from Japan, China, the United States, the United Kingdom, the whole of Europe, which has not gone through the phase of industrialization.
Right.
I do not know if we are going to jump it. But why jump it? Because where is our comparative advantage? We have resources that are not processed. And therefore, if we want to jump into maybe go into the service industry is making these apps, the X, the insurance, the banking. I can see it's already saturated. I do not know how many of us we think we're going to do the X app and probably beat the next
the next Facebook.
You know, but
right.
You have all insurance companies that are from in the region. I don't know if you have any Ugandan insurance companies.
Srico, we have a few.
Yeah. We have a few,
right.
But the top
right.
are not, meaning that all the time your profits are going to be repatriated. Yes, I pay tax and they will give you the jobs, but I'm just giving the reality.
Right.
Look at the banking sector. How much has Uganda due? So the limited options that you have to do is industrialization. Is why you have the raw materials, is why you can turn coffee from $2.50 to $20 in the next day and be able to even be accepted globally. Do you know how much coffee we import, Ben, back here in Uganda? I looked at the numbers, I was very shocked.
How bad is it?
218 million that we're importing, and we think we're not coffee drinkers. Estimated to grow in the next 3 years to $380 million.
So what you're saying is that we are importing coffee.
Yeah, your own coffee.
That we should not be allowing to live in the first place.
Yeah, because why should you allow because you know when you're trading all over the world, you must use a dollar.
Right.
So you're losing your money on the dollar. I mean, your forex exchange rate risk is so huge.
Isn't this
high.
where the issue of regulation comes in, where, like they are now trying to do with the Chinese electric cars, for example, and that they've done with some other places where you impose such high tariffs on this coffee that you force innovation locally to make sure that it becomes much easier and cheaper for a person to drink our own coffee, which is still as good as what you're going to import from Denmark and
You can
Germany.
only do those tariffs if you're able to produce. Then, when you see the mathematics of demand and supply, or of consumers, let me use this word, is if you're saying that Nescafe is here and maybe the other coffee is here, you must give the free will to the client to pick what you want.
Right.
So you cannot even think of putting tariffs even when you don't have a product. So countrymen, friends, you do not even have a product.
An equivalent of the Nescafe.
Leave alone even
we do
half
have.
equivalent.
We do have some
Tell
people
me
that are making.
which equivalent do you have to Nescafe?
I've seen Stark Cafe. They seem to be trying to do something.
Exactly.
You're working on something.
So how much have you invested in? Can I tell you something? A freeze-dry factory with full complete lines, probably I got one of the quotation, and that's when I started quaking, and I thought, this dream, I must give it up. They gave me a bill of 54 million euros. And
54 million euros.
Yes. So when
That's more than 250 billion shillings.
Exactly. So when I keep saying, please, you must invest. I'm not saying innovate your own freeze dry, because anyway, these other guys have already.
Isn't that an option though, if it comes to that point?
Ben,
where
I don't think it's an option, but it will take us time.
Right.
Ben, do you want to start innovating, making new dub cabs? I mean the double cabins or whatever. Maybe
I don't think that would be wise, because
maybe if
people have clearly done
people
it much
can come
better
and assemble from here.
Right.
So
let's talk about that, because it's also very important before we wrap up, because I think it's maybe for me, the culmination of our conversation this afternoon and why it's really important. You have a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs in this country. You have a lot of innovators in this country who are saying, we want to try and be a part of this industrialization. We want to try and see if we can contribute our part and do our little bit for going in this direction to help with this big dream of tenfold increase for our economy. What advice would you give to this aspiring entrepreneur, to this innovator, who is saying, I think I might have the right ideas, but I don't have access to funding. I'm not able to get the resources that I need. I'm not able to get the training and the mentorship and the capacity building that I need to have to be able to help me make a meaningful contribution to where you need to go, especially considering the fact that a lot of our people are young, and therefore give us an opportunity to be able to train them well to become these innovators that we want. Look at what Taiwan has done. When Taiwan sneezes in the chip sector, the entire world comes to a standstill. We saw that during COVID.
Correct.
How do we do that for our innovators in the space where we have advantages? What would you say to that young person watching the show today who's saying, I have some ideas. I think there are things that I want to be able to do. How do we encourage them to be able to innovate?
Ben, what I know very well is that we have very smart innovators and entrepreneurs in this country. That is no doubt. I've looked at young people and I'm like, wow. The advice I can give that young man, young lady who is watching us, let not your ideas keep into the ideation form. You must start to get to do something. There's no one who is going to pick you wherever you are if you're still at that ideation. It's a bitter truth. People think, Ben, that the president maybe picked me maybe because I'm from Tugume or anything. Ben, I've failed. I've been at it for the longest time, as you know very well. I have tried to do my abilities to make sure I get where I've been. Ben, you know, at one point I was a tax conductor.
I know.
In this country. You know very well that I've done every kind of business that there is anyone can do. And therefore, that bitter truth I'm telling any young person, don't get lazy and remain at that ideation level.
Right.
Someone
how do you go
is
from
going to pick you.
How do you go from there to the next step if you don't have any access to resource? Because that's always the biggest problem, right? I might have some really good ideas, but I have nowhere to even start to be able to get that little pull up, that leg up, that push up, just to get that breakthrough.
One, from an individual point of view, I'm going to speak from an individual point of view, but also from a policy country point of view, because all these work together. From an individual point of view, you got to break your head and your mind, whatever resources that you have, to start from somewhere. I know most of us, Ben, we want to get everything to connect and then we start. My friend, as an entrepreneur, was hustled and was been all through it. Things will never get together.
And you will fail a lot along the way.
Yes.
Right?
So don't wait to get that 1 million shillings. Even if you had 100 shillings, start with that. Because I know a couple of us, that's the hardest crack. You're waiting for everything, all the nuts to put together, then you start.
Right.
I do not think, Ben, that has not worked for me. Most of all my businesses, I actually have started almost with no money. It has been about the idea, the passion, the dream. And I'm not talking to inspire you young people or anyone. This is the bitter truth. Don't wait for everything to come together. I think you will never start, or you will fail to start because of that. Now, let me go to
the policy.
The policy level.
Right.
Again, private sector. I am not saying we should not put money in these programs that government is trying to do and everything. When I say money going to the private sector, what do I mean? Be deliberate and ensure that because you've liquidated enough UDB, now UDB is lending at a single digit. The moment UDB starts to lend at a single digit, I mean like 9% or 8%, you see other commercial banks getting down. Yeah. One of the challenges in the business that I've faced is high cost of money. Ben, you get money at 22%. My friend, you watching me, I'm praying for you. Most likely, they're going to sell your property.
I think the prayers might not help at that kind of rate.
No, I'm just simply saying
right.
that.
Even the prayers might not be enough.
I'm just simply saying the cost of money here
is prohibitive.
Is prohibitive.
Right.
There is not any developmental business that we're talking about in industrialization, in tourism, that money indeed, like for the president says, is for buying things from China and immediately put it back. But if you're going to think of import substitution of tenfold, my friend PSST, go be. You must put money in industrialization to go to the private sector. There are many young people out there who are coming up with good things and wonderful things. Right. How is government taking care of them? But also, let me say this, Ben. As government tries to put money in the private sector, we must be people to lead the war with honesty. We must not be the people to block. What do I mean block? If I'm given money, Ben, and I go and buy the G-Wagons, I don't know, and use the money or misappropriate the money, then it means we are failing the next generation that is. So how do we also as a generation start to deal with our honest issues? And what you've been saying, maybe because people are being dishonest, that's why they bring their dishonest on some people who are trying to do something. So while this money we are advocating and say, put money in the private sector, I think there must be clear rules of the game. That you know what, Nelson, you're given $10 million. You don't use it very well.
We're coming for you.
That's how China has been able to grow.
Right.
That's how all these other countries have been able to grow. So the systems of honesty, of rules, they must apply to the private sector. Right. It must not just be a goodwill.
Right. One last question for you. In terms of what you think and see the government doing, are we going in the right direction? What are they doing wrong that needs to be changed immediately? Or are we making steps in the right direction?
Like, once again, I'm not a scholar of economics, but I learned
from your perspective as a person who is an investor and an entrepreneur.
I've learned that there's big growth and huge growth in our economy, and the digits of inflation have slightly gone down when you take it up from that level. What government, and we can see it now in the budget that we're going to hear tomorrow, starting to come up and say, let's industrialize, let's put money in industry, I think that's the correct direction.
Right.
If we can, us in the private sector, come up together and say, we know that money is going to industrialization. The reason why I'm telling young people, I started watching budget when I was 14 years. I started watching State of Nation address when I was 14 years. So young people follow these things, know where government thinking is going, especially government budget. I don't know about the other things, maybe the other programs, I don't follow them. But issues of money, issues of budget, I try to align myself and follow. And then I know how can I align myself as an entrepreneur.
Right.
So in your final statement, like you said, young people, align yourself and try to interest yourself with what government is interested in. By the way, let's think that not government is not doing a lot of work. I can tell you, Ben, I discuss, by the way, your A-class people, if you didn't know, they end up working in government. So your A-class people are in government. Those papers and policies that they write, they have A-class things. Now, with the private sector, can we be able to tap into that and make sure we align with that? The moment government and private sector aligns, the tenfold economy will happen.
Thank you. Nelson Tugume, CEO, team leader, Inspire Africa Group. Pleasure to host you. All the best with the coffee. It's a shame I couldn't offer you a cup of coffee, but maybe we can go and enjoy one right now.
Yeah.
Tomorrow afternoon, this conversation is continuing throughout the evening today here on NBS, of course, live at 9. As we build up, don't forget to be able to catch the budget reading, which is going to be tomorrow afternoon. As you've had Nelson mention, we don't have football to distract you at the moment. So as a young person especially, can you interest yourself a little bit in what's happening with our economy by just hearing about where the budget is going and what the minister is saying? That's going to be happening tomorrow. We'll be covering all the proceedings right here on NBS TV, on TV, online, wherever it might be. My name is Ben Mine. Have yourself a wonderful afternoon. God bless you. God bless Uganda.
NBS happening now.